The Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 5:30 p.m. This is a special board meeting being held on September 5th, 2023. We have a quorum with all members present. Please join me in a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated. At this time, we'll take action on the action items.
All right, trustees, we have Mr. Bates to come up to speak about policy EIAA local revisions.
All right, thank you, Dr. Nivens. Good evening, Board of Trustees. Tonight's presentation is an overview of the most recent recommendations and updates related to our LCISD exemption policy, which is board policy EIAA local. And feedback was recently given on our recent policy from the following members, as you can see, from our most recent policy committee meeting. And those members include 3 trustees, our cabinet members such as myself, the area superintendents, the high school principals, and of course our 7th and 8th grade junior high principals. There are 3 additions that we are adding to the EIAA local policy, and they're highlighted on the presentation in blue as well as in your packet. The first addition is to add 2 additional days, but that is with the accommodation, the inclusion of an actual medical document from a medical physician. So students will now go from having 3 absences to be able to have 5. So those first 3 absences are the same that we had in our current EIAA local policy, but then we've added 2 additional, but they must be accompanied by a medical physician's notice. The second addition is the addition to allow the attendance review committee to be able to oversee and hear any appeals related to students having more than the 5 absences that would be allotted. So if any students, for any reason, for any uncontrollable circumstances, primarily related to medical reasons, they will now be able to appeal to an attendance review committee, which is a committee that is already required by all of our campuses. They will be able to appeal to the ARC, which is what attendance review committee stands for. And the also thing I would like to highlight is, that appeal to that committee is final. So whatever that committee states is what the final decision would be. And then the last addition to the EIAA local policy would be for students, if students are absent. And I'll also show how that's a change on the next slide as well. So previously, students in our policy stated that students did not have to be present they were not considered to be absent if they were not present for the final exam. But now we're adding that students are required to be present. And we're also stating that if a student is not present, they'll be marked absent, as well as they will then be required to also take the final exam. So those are the 3 additions to the EIAA local policy. And then the following slide is the removals, and that is from the previous language you heard me state. And our current policy states that students will not be considered absent. And so now we're going to remove that phrase that says semester testing days shall not count as an absence, because now it will count as an absence for students who are exempt from the final exams. The last thing is just more so cleanup language. It also makes reference to FDD local, which relates to military leave, and that's for students that are needing to do certain things in order to be able to get an entrance to the military, the U.S. military, and they have up to 4 days that can be considered absence. And that is actually now, that language has been moved to FEA local due to a recent update in one of the board policy committee meetings. So those are the removals related to the EIAA local. And the rationale is just to make sure that we are having better recognition and opportunities to make sure that we're taking into consideration students who have any type of medical leave, medical issues, or any other controllable circumstances, and also to clean up any language that conflicts with the new policy that we're trying to make sure we have promoted. If approved tonight, this is what the current policy would look like. It does not have the actual blue and red highlights in it, but it would go into effect this current semester for the fall 2023. And I'll pause for any questions or for the board to have any extended discussion.
So clarification, Mr. Bates, if the board approves this tonight, then it goes into effect tonight. And so does that mean everybody get a clean slate starting now? Like what if I've already had issues in the past, like the past 3 weeks of school? What happens then if I already missed my opportunity for an exemption? If
the student's already passed the 5 or the 3.
Past the 3, right?
Yes, if it's the board's will, we can make that decision tonight to where that actually can start today. So students would get a clean slate, and so the 3 that is not related to medical would actually, they would start clean slate, and then they would still be able to get 2 additional as long as accompanied by a medical note.
Well, one more thing I want to clarify. Just I want to make sure we're clear. We don't over-communicate this. So in the past, students have always been required to come to school during exemptions. So the policy that was written in 2002, I believe, they were always required to come to school during exemptions. We have been doing a good job at enforcing that. And so I want to make sure we understand, as the policy was written back in 2002, students were always required to come to school during exemptions. I see some heads shaking like no. If you go back and look at the policy, they were always required to come to school during exemptions. So they are still required to come to school during exemptions. They are exempt from the test, but they have to come to school and sign in. That hasn't changed. So I want to make sure that we don't leave here tonight and folks say, okay, now you're exempt, you don't have to show up. Students have always been required to show up for the days they're exempt, but they are exempt from the exam.
And they have to show up at what time?
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is their attendance time.
And they just have to check in, is that
check in.
correct? And then,
You check in.
So they check in, and I guess it's up to the discretion of the principal as to whether or not they can then go home, or?
That'll work out between them and the parent. And so what we don't want to do is have a student just coming and going without a parent understanding exactly what's going on with their child. And so parent says, Roosevelt can come up and they have a written note from the parent to be excused, and fine. But we won't allow a student to come up and check in and just leave on their own, not without a parent knowing what's going on.
So for a kid, maybe though, I'm thinking of like kids who ride the bus to school. Would they have to stay at school all day?
Yeah, if they don't have a way home, they would, but then the principal would have something in place. I know when I was a principal, we had exemptions. We had a certain part of our campus that was like a field day. And so if you were exempt, then you didn't have to go to the main side of the building to take your exam. You come on this side, and we had a field day, and we played games, and we had senior activities. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Yeah.
Well, in our district, usually those are half-days anyway, so if they come to school, they're leaving by 11:30 or whatever it says on so they're not staying all day. But I see what you're saying, that if a parent says, my child drove himself to school today, and once he checks in, he can drive himself home, so the parent knows where he or she is. Okay. And I just want to be clear, this do-over, or what we vote on tonight, this is only for those that have already used a 3 days. This is not just everybody starting fresh, like it's the first day of school. Those count for exemptions. I just want to be clear what we're saying the kids, because there's some kids that have had COVID and missed 5 days already. So where do they stand after this passes today?
No, what I'm proposing is that once the board approves this tonight, everyone starts with a fresh slate.
Okay, that's what I
All
thought, but I
students. Everyone starts with a
didn't,
fresh slate.
I didn't hear
So-
that exactly.
So for the purposes of our teachers that give out exemptions, is that anything past this day, what's today, the 5th? Whatever today is.
The 5th.
They run together, y'all. That they won't count that they'll use whatever is after the board policy passes.
Can you give, I don't know if we want to go that, but the fact that students miss does cost the district. It's not just the fact that we don't know where our students are. It hinders our ability to possibly have more teacher pay or whatever, because we're missing out on quite a bit of money when the students don't come.
That is correct.
Yes, ma'am. To be exact, between exemptions and early graduations, Lamar CISD, we lost about $1.3 million last year in funding. And so, if students aren't in school, we lose funding.
So how does this affect seniors then? Because a lot of seniors are done
We
earlier.
haven't addressed that with the seniors yet.
Okay.
Once they graduate.
What's your question?
I think seniors stop going to school a lot earlier than the rest of them,
They do, and we lose funding for that.
but are they still going to have to come for the exemptions and sign in?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
okay.
But do they take the finals early? Because we've been graduating them early. So,
That's typical.
once they graduate, they're not expected to show up, or we're gonna have to work on that.
That's correct.
That's right. No, they're not expected to show up once they graduate, but we do lose funding for them if they graduate early. We lose funding when they graduate early. And so I have a story for everything. And so when I was a high school principal, we lost funding. And so after my kids graduated, I just asked them out the kindness of their heart just to come back up and sign in, and they did, just for me. But we lose funding when they graduate early. And last year, between exemptions and early graduation, we lost $1.3 million in funding.
Right, but how much of that was seniors? I mean, at least with seniors, there's not as many. It's not like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. Do you see what I'm saying? As far as, it's just the seniors that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's $1.3 million, and so, for the exemption part, it was, think about 400,000.
I think you said 3 or 4.
The rest of that was, seniors graduating early.
Correct. And the seniors would calculate for a lot of the days because of the number of days they're missing. Even though there's less students involved with the exemptions, there's more days that seniors are out.
So we're doing this for $300,000 essentially, right?
Yes.
So I could see where some parents might be like, not love that. Also, I see both sides. I kind of see where, some people aren't going to like this, but at the end of the day, we're giving them 2 more days, plus we're giving discretion to the ARC. So I feel like it's a good trade-off.
So the seniors really are only for the first semester, because second semester, they would have be graduated. So like Dr. Niven said, we're not asking them to come back, but if they did, that would be wonderful. But $300,000 or $500,000, that's more police officers.
Right.
That's fixing Trailer Stadium. I mean, you look at it, what can we do with that money if we had it? Hire more teachers, get pay raises, and all that. But I understand too, like you said, we don't want to inconvenience, but to sign in, and if principals have something for them to do, or say, you're leaving in a half an hour anyway, because schools, or an hour and a half is probably the most they would be there.
Because
But
at the end of the day, it's still an incentive. There's plenty of districts who don't give exemptions at all. There's plenty of districts that require this. In fact, when we looked at similar exemption policies in neighboring districts, most of them do require the kids to come check in for the day.
They do.
So,
I think that if our seniors are finishing early, I think if they're done with high school, why would we expect them to show up? It's a funding issue on one hand, but if we're graduating them and they're finished with the curriculum that the state says K through 12, what's the point of asking them to come back?
No, I'm not asking any senior to come back. I'm just saying that's what I did when I was campus principal, because, we took a heavy hit. No, we're not asking our seniors to come back this year or any year in the past. We're not asking them to come back. I'm just making it known publicly, as I always do. For transparency purposes, we lose money when seniors graduate early. A significant amount of money when seniors graduate early.
Mr. Bates, could you rewind that a little bit and go back to one of the things that we're going to remove on the policy?
Right here?
Yeah, so we're going to, is that a sentence we're removing from the policy?
Yes, sir. That's a sentence that's in our current AA local policy.
But it was right after where it said they had to come to school, so it didn't fit.
Right.
So, I mean, in our policy, it had students on exam day will come in and check in, and then it had, would be not counted as an absence. So we didn't understand how they wrote that in there right after that sentence.
So could it be argued that it actually did exempt the students from school that day and that the other sentence was wrong instead of this sentence being wrong? I mean, it's been there for 21 years and no one's said anything about it. Is that accurate? Is it?
Yeah, basically what those two sentences together said was, if a student shows up to sign in, then that day will not be counted as an absence. If they don't sign up to sign in, then it will be counted as an absence.
So let me take a step back. Can we explain to the public what the reason for the exemption is in the first place?
So exemptions is typically just an incentive for students, one, to make good grades, to make sure that they're coming to school, not having a lot of absences and things like that. And it's primarily for the grades 7th and 8th, or of course 9 through 12, which is the reason why you saw the various group of people that were at the recent policy committee meeting. So it's basically just an incentive.
So if a student qualifies for the exemptions but does not show up on the day of the test because he or she is exempt from the test, but the student is marked absent because of that, that student will therefore have to take that test before going to the next semester or going to the next grade.
Or it could even be in the next semester. It's a date that's agreed upon by the campus principal. That's what the new language would say, yes.
Do we have any restrictions from the state or the TEA on the number of excused absences that we can grant?
Not on the number of excused absences, it just speaks absence in general, which students of compulsory attendance have to be in school 90% of the time.
So this kind of exempting from finals is completely up to us as far as the TEA and the state are concerned?
Yes, sir.
They don't have any.
You're correct.
Okay, can I throw out a hypothetical? Because this happened with my daughter last year. She was exempt from both exams on the last day of school. No, I'm sorry. She was exempt from one exam on the last day of school, but she had to take the other, but she was scheduled to go out of the country that last day of school. So she worked it out beforehand with her teacher to take the final on a different day. So we're not saying it's all or nothing. People can still work it out with their teachers if need be. Okay.
Yes, I mean, our teachers are professionals. We trust them to use their professional judgment, and they can work out whatever they want with a student. As long as the teacher's in agreement, I'll have no issues with that.
That's the same way with the attendance review committee, because things do happen, and they're extenuating circumstances before everybody's control, and we don't want to punish any child or any family. There's a death in the family, there's a car accident, God forbid, but we want to make sure that those kids are taken care of. So we're not trying to punish anyone. We're just trying to say, not everybody gets a gold star.
Right.
But they still have to make at least 80% in the class. And I was told there's several kids that will take the final if they're close to making an A or close to making a B because they want to up their grade.
Correct.
So some kids don't want to be exempt. And they have to have a good not office referrals. And so there's other criteria than just absences.
Correct.
And we left all those in place.
Can you go over the conduct portion of this as well, just so that we've stated it in public?
The conduct portion as far as students and referrals?
Yeah, yes, what, in order to have an exemption, you still have to have your conduct in order.
That is correct. Forgive me, I don't have that information directly in front of me, but the short version is yes. There's more than just attendance that comes along with exemption. There is also absences, there is also behavior, referrals, out-of-school suspensions, in-school suspensions, those things that come into play as far as being able to be qualified for exemptions.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I do have one question. In here, we just listed the high school grades. Are these going to be the same criteria? Because we still had it in the 2002 for 7th and 8th grade.
Yes, ma'am.
So we haven't changed, this will be the same criteria over in the junior highs for now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It just wasn't in here. Okay.
I'll make sure we get updated. Yes, ma'am.
I wish that the policy committee had added a provision that if a kid has 2 finals on the same day and he or she is exempt from both of those, that his attendance is not mandated. I think that would be, I think that would make more sense practically to the families out there. I like that we're adding additional exemptions for absences, for excused absences to this policy. I'm not big on this other piece of it, though.
One of the things we did talk about at at our policy meeting, there were concerns about students that have to go to an orthodontist, or that those can be coded differently, so that's not part of this 5. Is that correct on my understanding?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, because that was a lot of confusion when I was going through the schools, people telling me, you know, you could be out all day and that's an absence, but just to be out 2 hours to go. But so your registrar needs to be able to code that correctly so it doesn't harm the students, so that parents can make doctor's appointments
And come back.
and come back.
Yes, ma'am.
Exactly.
So if I have a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m. and I come back at 10 or 11, then that doesn't count against your exemptions.
Correct. The code that we use in PEMS is called YMD, and that's the code that they use to denote that this student left some portion of the day and is coming back a certain portion of the day for medical reasons only.
Some teachers and parents felt like their students were being punished for them trying to get them a doctor's appointment, and it's very hard to do things early in the morning and late in the afternoon, especially if a student is doing after-school activities.
Correct.
So long as they know this is happening. I think that was a confusion also that I found.
Yes. Okay, may I have a motion for the board to approve policy EIAA local revisions as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Ms. Danziger makes the motion. Can I have a second? Okay, Ms. Hotzel makes the second. Is there any discussion?
I'm just going to go on the record of, I like the fact that we added excused absences. I don't like the other piece, so I'm not going to support it tonight.
Okay. Okay, I call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries with Mr. Welch against. So that's, okay.
All right, trustees, we'll move into our informational items. We first have our transportation and school hours update. So we have a tag team with Mr. Buchanan and Ms. Sonia Cole-Hamilton. And the format is going to be a little bit different tonight, so we have a lot of information to share. What I wanted the team to do is to make sure that we talked about all the times we've spoken about these things in public in a board meeting. And so little bits will be redundant, but my whole thing is to make sure that the public understands these are conversations we've had in the public from this dais for a year. And so I've gotten emails about, what are you hiding, and no one's ever said this. We've had these conversations from these tables for a whole year on the microphone that's recorded. And so what I've asked the team is go back to each date. We've had these conversations and what we talked about. And so the first we'll have transportation and school hours update, and Mr. Buchanan will kick us off.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Dr. Nivens. Tonight, again, we're going to bring you forth a discussion of our school hours and transportation update. Back in October 18 of 2022, we brought to the public's attention the issues we're facing, and it is really a driver shortage and an increased number of students needing transportation. These were some of the issues that we're getting. One is students weren't getting picked up till almost 5 o'clock. Also from the campus, also we had two issues that are listed here of students arriving at campus after first period. So they were missing the first period of instruction and getting there during the middle of their second period class.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you real quick, Ms. Buchanan. These are the exact presentations we gave. What day was this? October 18th?
Yes, sir.
It's the exact same presentation we gave, so none of this has changed.
That is
So I want
correct.
to make sure everybody understands, we've been having this conversation for a year in public, and none of this has changed.
So in 21-22 school year, we increased our driver recruiting, where we were recruiting our drivers, how we were recruiting our drivers. The district also became a DPS testing site, so that means that we also pay for a driver to be able to get his or her CDL license, but we can also test them, and they don't have to go to the actual DPS office to do their driving test. So it helps speed up the process. We also looked at our walking zone, being able, right now it's currently at half a mile. If we went to 2 miles, what would that do? At that point in time in October, we had 50 vacancies. And if we went to 2 miles on that two-tier system, we would eliminate bus service at that time to 11,201 students. And we would only eliminate 17 of the 50 vacancies that we currently had within the department. Additional steps we took is during the summer of '22, we hired 10 additional drivers. So our recruitment did start getting us more drivers. And in September of '22, we were able to add 3 more. But we also noticed that in September of '22, we increased our number of students transported by 3,000, causing more comeback routes. So we started exploring more ideas to be able to address both the driver shortage and the increased number of students that we were transporting. So we started looking at surrounding districts. These are some of the surrounding districts and the number of tiers that they are currently running, which is school start times. I would like to point out that if you'll notice the size, which is the actual geographical size of these districts, Fort Bend, Katy, Cy-Fair, and even Alief, they are at least half the size of our district or smaller. One important thing to note is Katy, Fort Bend, and Cy-Fair have a larger student population, so their density is a lot greater, where we're more spread out and our students live further and further apart. So by looking at that, we said if we were at 2-tier, what would happen if we went to a 3-tier option, meaning our elementary schools would be on 1 tier, our middle school, junior high, and then our high school would be on a separate. It would still require us to eliminate 36 elementary school routes and 29 middle school, junior high routes to be able to make that system work. Again, we would try to see if we can get some of those middle school, junior highs to combine those routes without elimination. But again, of the 16 of the 36 elementary school routes that were needed to be eliminated, it would require students to walk a distance of 2 miles to and from school. So with a 3-tier system, we would have to go out to a 2-mile radius to be able to make that work. So then we started exploring the 4-tier system, meaning half of our elementary schools would start, the other half, then the middle school, junior high, and then the high school. It would not eliminate any service for any of our students. Again, it wouldn't eliminate anything. And then at that point in time, we would need 40 minutes for our secondary tier. And in October, we were thinking that we needed a 20 minutes between elementary school routes and the next tier. You'll see in the next presentation that we realized that that distance of time was not enough, so we had to increase it. This is an example of the elementary school tiers and how they fall.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so once the transportation team recommended going to a multi-tier system, we looked at surrounding districts because we recognize this would impact our school hours and our start times. So looking at the same districts that they utilize as a data point for the number of tiers, Alief, Fort Bend, Katy, and Cy-Fair, we took note of what their start times look like, and we created some samples. And so some samples, we have high schoolers starting first, with our elementary groups in the middle, and then our middle and junior high at the end. The logic there was letting the high schoolers go first, so you've got an older sibling perhaps at home already with the younger siblings, and then an older sibling in the evening to receive a younger sibling. Example 2, we've got the secondary campuses going first, and we're ending with the elementary campuses, and option 3 was closest to what we currently had in place, with our elementary students going and followed by our secondary students. And we recognized it was a significant change for our community, and so we wanted to get feedback from parents, students, staff. We decided
decided it'd be a good idea to combine this with an effort we already had going. So we combined our school hours survey with our instructional calendars survey. And then we created our timeline. At the time is what we envisioned our rollout looking like. And then that was the end of our October presentation. Do you all have any questions for what we presented back in October?
So next was our December the 13th of 2022 presentation. Again, we were discussing our nationwide bus shortage, because this is not just a Lamar CISD issue. This is something that is affecting every school district across the country. And then we've also, at that point in time, decided that we were, because of things that we were doing, we really need to eliminate those comeback routes because of the missed instructional time. Again, we went over our surrounding districts. But in December, we came back with a two-tier system. If we were continuing to stay at a two-tier system, it would require eliminating 36 elementary school routes and 79 secondary routes. Looking at that, we were probably going to have to go out to a minimum of 5 miles. So we were going to have to go out 5 miles from each of our campuses, and whether they have walking paths or not, but just eliminate transportation that far of a distance to stay at a two-tier system. Again, this is the same information that we presented in October with the three-tier system of the elementary schools, middle school, junior high, eliminating 36 elementary school routes, 29 secondary routes, and again, our elementary schools would have to go to a distance of at least 2 miles. Our four-tier system would not eliminate any services, and again, if we talked about it earlier, is we noticed that from our elementaries, we would need 30 minutes between each tier instead of 20 minutes, and that was the time that was adjusted.
So from November to December, we started getting some feedback regarding the potential school hours. And the model we proposed initially was a 7 a.m. start time. After receiving feedback, we were asked, I think by trustee, to create a 7:30 model and what that would look like, since at the time students were starting school at 7:30. So what you see on the screen is the 7:30 mock-up that we created. And then we also shared the 7 a.m. model. And again, from November to December, we'd spoken to principals, AP, central office leaders, the DSIC. We were incorporating feedback, and it did change the launch of our survey because we were incorporating their feedback in real time, updating specifically the school calendar. And so we ended up launching the survey December 1st through January 6th. And at the time of the board meeting, the survey was live, and we had already received over 14,000 responses. And last year, we closed the school calendar survey with a little over 6,000 responses. And then we shared an updated timeline for trustees during the December meeting. Do you have any questions regarding the presentations we shared in December?
I do. So when you say you got those numbers back, did that include students?
The
Survey numbers,
The
sorry.
survey numbers, yes, we surveyed students, staff, and parents.
Can I ask why did we survey students?
Why do we survey students? Well, it's good to get student feedback. The decisions we make impact them, and so just considering their voice is something that I think the district has done historically. And so for this same survey, we decided to incorporate student feedback as well.
At the January 17th, 2023 meeting, we presented the Board of Trustees, again, the four-tier system. Nothing had changed in that slide from the meeting before. And we also presented the different tiers of knowing what campuses of the elementary fell into what tier.
Okay, so by the January meeting, we closed our survey. We sent our survey to more than 72,000 email addresses, and we took a really aggressive approach, again, recognizing this was a significant change for this community. We sent direct emails, we did items in campus newsletters, backpack flyers, posts on social media, and the district website. As I shared earlier, we received more than 18,000 responses, and here is where we landed. For parents, option C received the most votes for its #1 ranking. For staff, option C received the most votes for its number one ranking. For students, option B received the most votes for its number one ranking, which was a little surprised because we were surprised when we were hearing that students would not want to wake up earlier, and in fact, they did not mind the option B. And then looking at the data, it would appear that majority of the votes for the first rank options would be for schedule option C. So during the January meeting, trustees, we presented two potential options, a 7:30 start time for option C and a 7:15 start time for option C. And again, that was just based off of feedback that the 7 a.m. time was too early, but then for the 7:30, some people thought getting out at 4:45 was too late, so we created a 7:15 option. We spoke to principals, APs, district staff, students, and parents on the survey. And so just want to highlight some of the feedback that we received. This is the student impact. Impact the students with a 7:30 and a 7:15 start time. Little instructional impact for elementary students. High school getting out after 4 o'clock was an increased potential for missed instruction to get to activities. With staff leaving earlier could yield a loss of instruction for everyone. A 7:15 option C for impact to students, the earlier bus pickup for elementary group A students, meaning in the morning, and in the afternoon, elementary students may be home alone longer. This feedback came from district staff. We asked district staff, considering an option C, what's going to be the impact of staff, students, and parents? So for impact of staff, central office will need to stagger some employee schedules to have later office hours. We did recognize that an option C would be a big difference for middle school and junior high staff, but that it would allow the opportunity for them to offer tutorials in the morning. And as far as impact to parents at the time, we recognize that adjusting daycare for elementary group B could be an issue for parents. Improved traffic conditions at secondary complex, we thought would be an outcome of moving to an option C. And then the fact that older siblings could transport their younger siblings to school could be a potential outcome going with an option C model. Trustees, do you have any questions from our January presentation?
Can we go back to the survey results? So I see on option C that obviously had the most votes. But I think when you look at option A, if you take out the students, parents and staff combined, like overwhelmingly voted for option A, right? Am I seeing that right?
I think
Or no? C.
it's C.
Yeah, that was part of our discussion in this boardroom,
Yeah,
exactly what you just said.
okay. Okay, thanks.
So on our February 21st, 2023 board meeting, again, we presented the board with a 4-tier option. That slide and information had not changed since the December board meeting. And again, we presented the elementary school tiers on what tier each elementary school would reside in.
So the February board meeting was time to vote, and so we shared the same information we shared at the previous meeting, shared the same data points. And when we got to the options, the additional information that we shared were that for elementary students, in option C, 7:15 a.m. start time is only a 15-minute difference. For high school, it'd be a 10-minute move, and the biggest challenge would be for whomever falls on the 4th tier. In our research, we did determine that our middle school and junior high at the time was our smallest population of students. At the time, grades 6 through 8 totaled 9,451, and so impacting them would be during the least amount of time you spend 3 years in middle school and junior high compared to 4 years in high school or 5 to 6 years in elementary. So we will be impacting the smallest amount of students for the smallest amount of time was a data point that we shared. We shared option C first because, again, survey results showed that option C was the top, but we also shared what option B could look like. For option B, at the time, we shared the differences in time. It'd be for example, one, a 7:30, it'd be a 45 minutes for high school, 5-minute difference junior high, 80 minutes for elementary A, 110 minutes for elementary B. Going with a 7:15 start time would be a 60-minute difference for high school, 20-minute difference for middle school and junior high, 65-minute difference for elementary A, and a 95-minute difference for group B. And then with option A, same data points, a 7:30 start time would be a 45-minute difference for high school, 5-minute difference for junior high and middle, 80-minute difference for elementary A, 110-minute difference for elementary B, and going with a 7:15 model would be a 60-minute difference for high school, 20-minute difference for middle school and junior high, 65-minute difference for elementary A, and a 95-minute difference for elementary B. At the time, Mr. Buchanan developed a model to show you what it could look like.
So Board of Trustees, what we did was we took our silver track, which is both the south side of Rosenberg and the Kendallton area, because it had a variety of routes, both rural and urban, when we started looking at it. So during the two-tier system, the earliest pickup time that we were having on that route was 6:11. So looking at it, based on our information that we had at that time when we built that route, it was a 6:07 would be the earliest pickup time for that tier group. Our actual pickup time is 3 minutes earlier. So we're actually picking that earliest student up at 6:04. We looked at the average bus time that the students would be riding, both on a 2 and a 4 tier, and we were pretty spot on when it came to the average ride time for elementary schools and for our bilingual program on our buses. Then we looked at our secondary pickup times. Our earliest pickup time at a two-tier system was 6:08. We noticed that in our four-tier system, we estimated that early pickup time to be 6:32, and our actual pickup time is 6:41. And then our average time on the bus across all routes was the 30-minute pickup time. Are there any questions on that presentation?
Mr. Buchanan, I do remember that, and that was modeled on the Randall Silver Track, is that correct?
That is correct, sir, yes.
And obviously, one of the reasons why we were here tonight is because of the Purple Track problems in the last 3 weeks. Did you guys run any kind of simulation on that back then?
Not in February, we did not. Because the Purple Track both is condensed, it has urban areas and it has the Simonton area where it is rural as well. So we were looking at the Silver Track to take a sample because at that point in time, the Silver Track had the worst tardy buses within the district. There's a reason that we chose it, because we had 4 routes getting there during the middle of second period to our secondary campuses during that track. So during February and July, the board did take action and approved option C, which was the option that you see in front of us was the school start times and the elementary school routes. So action steps, we began building our 4-tier routes. Our transportation team was meeting weekly to monitor the progress of those routes being built. And then we had a monthly department meeting that I met with that department to monitor their progress. Also during the spring, we launched a request for qualifications for an operational audit firm to be able to come in and do audits on our operations areas, including transportation. The board approved that in June of 2023. We hired the Texas Association of School Business Officials, and tonight we have the Executive Director, Tracy Ginsburg, here is with us. She is also the former CFO at Fort Bend ISD. And then Terry Penn, he has 25 years of transportation experience, and he came in and audited the Department for Best Practices, Procedures, and the new 4-tier route system. So we're going to ask Mr. Penn to come up and give a brief deal of what he did this summer so the board can know.
Dr. Nevins, Board of Trustees, greetings. As mentioned, I am a consultant with the Texas Association of School Business Officials and have been doing this work for a number of years, as well as a director of transportation for several districts in the North Dallas area. With that brings me about 25 years experience. I was invited and came in the first week of July with the sole intention of looking at the 4-tier bell system that was adopted and to review it based on whether or not the gap time between those bells were adequate and could fulfill the requirements that were needed for the routes, and to also make sure that we were meeting the goals and objectives of the district, and that was to gain, if you will, drivers or gain routes as we adopt this 4-bell. Then what we expected to see were fewer bus routes, thus fewer drivers. And when I left, I was able to report to Greg and Dr. Nevins that they did fulfill that obligation, that the criteria that we looked at, we did review routes, we reviewed every track, and we looked at the routes using the sandbox data that was presented from last year's student ridership, and we determined that those routes were adequately meeting the goals of the district.
So was it a matter of just looking at the routes on paper, or were these routes actually run? Like, do we actually have drivers out running the routes, and you observe that, or how did that work? How does that work?
I didn't participate in any driving, but yeah, we could look at the routes that were written. These are route directions, if you will, that are given to each driver so that they can go out and follow a time schedule and make their bus stops. And it represents very, very closely and is very accurate unless there are extenuating circumstances. You can follow that bus route or that schedule, and it will pretty much be on time. Now, we didn't drive them, but I did review those. And again, looking for that gap. That was your big criteria. That is where you can either gain or lose time on your route.
Mr. Penn, it sounds like you thought our system was adequate in the summer. Is that accurate?
Correct.
So are you familiar with the problems we've had the last 3 weeks?
Yes.
So how can you reconcile those two thoughts, that our system was adequate in the summer when you audited it, but we're having a tremendous amount of problems in the first 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think we'll demonstrate here in a little bit some of those issues that developed that were unexpected. But on paper, it was designed to do what it was supposed to do. Okay.
So then that brings us to August of 2023. On August 11th, which is the Friday before the first day of school, 4,000 students were removed from routes and were lost from the VersaTrans system. Our VersaTrans system is the routing system that has all our students. Basically what that means is we had students assigned to buses and bus routes. The bus routes were still there, but the students weren't. So during the Saturday and Sunday, our BOSs, our bus operation supervisors, worked over that weekend to reattach those students to that routes. Also, during that Saturday, the VersaTrans routing software itself crashed. So we had to reboot that software. We got a hold of technology. Technology was supporting us, and what they did was they were able to double the amount of storage that we had on that server so that to keep that application up and running. So then on August the 14th, we again reattached those students. Students were still being detached from their routes. So a portion of those students had two different zip codes. We have areas of our district where their mailing zip code and their physical zip code are two different zip codes. And that was causing us some issues within our routing system. The other thing that we did on the 14th was not knowing exactly what was causing those issues. We stopped the import. Our Skyward is our student information system. So that's where our students register and their addresses are there. Every night it gets imported into our routing system so that we know where those students live, and then we can attach those students to routes. We started working immediately on reattaching and making corrections within VersaTrans. Our BOSs worked again until 1:15 on Tuesday morning, reattaching those students, sending out sky alerts to all district personnel as we were correcting and alerting those and reattaching those students.
Do you mind?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you say that they're detached from routes, how does that affect a bus route? I mean, if the route would stay the same.
So when a parent looks at Smart Tag, they see that they have no bus route and no bus stop.
Oh, okay.
So that's what reattaches.
Which is how they find out what bus their child rides.
And what
time
stop they
it
should
gets
be
out.
at, and then, yes, ma'am, and what time they should arrive. So when a student gets detached and a parent looks up at Smart Tag and says, what route should I be on and what time should I be there, it's blank. Because it says no route has been assigned. So the bus is still going through there, but don't know what students you should pick up and when they should pick them up. Again, on Tuesday, we still had routes being detached, and a small portion of those were due to zip code issues. Again, our BOSs were working till 11:35 that night to continue to make any kind of route improvements and input, route corrections that we were getting at that point in time. Yes, sir.
For the sake of clarity for the public, because I've gotten a lot of emails on this, and there's a lot of parents that want to understand this, why were 4,000 students eliminated from the system? And how did we not anticipate students having two different zip codes?
So we've had two different zip codes in the past, and it has not been an issue. So to answer your question specifically, we've been drilling down on that and working with technology and the routing software. We have not, because as of today, we still have students that are being detached from routes. So we have not found the ultimate solution of how do we keep these students attached to those routes as of today. We do know that it's not due to the Skyward import, as we have brought that Skyward back. If you'll notice on the 16th, we restarted that import because we were having to put students in manually into our routing system to get them attached, which you can only imagine the number of students that were going through there. The other thing is you can just imagine the frustration from the transportation department is corrections they were making on the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, they were making again on Monday and making again on Tuesday. So it was very hard for them to gain traction on making corrections to other things because they were continually having to go back and correct the students and what routes they are attached to and what stops they belong to.
And Versatran was not behaving like this last year? The software?
It was not. We were having some issues with it, but was not detaching students like it is currently.
And do we think that's because of the volume we're putting into it now compared to last year, or do we have any?
Versatrans has not, they've been digging into it along with our technology department. We're trying to identify students and the ones that are being pulled off to try to see if we can isolate that. But at this point in time, we have not found the root cause of that problem.
They can't even tell you what the issue is.
No, the software company cannot at this point in time.
Are they having these issues with other districts, or is it just ours?
I don't know that because a lot of other districts are not using this particular software. They're using a different version of Tyler Technologies software, or they're using a different routing system altogether.
Would it be possible, what did we do before Versatran? Would it be possible to, I don't know, do it the old-fashioned way, whatever that was?
So one thing that Versatrans helps us build things in real time. We could do that on paper. The problem is by doing that, you don't know what students are supposed to get on that bus and what students aren't supposed to get on that bus. So we can build the route, but then the driver doesn't know what kids are supposed to get on that bus. The staff doesn't know what kids to load on that bus so we could have stops, but knowing where those students are, that would be the bigger issue of the bus rider management.
Mainly
portion of
an
it.
elementary age type issue?
Or secondary, because I live in one side of the district and yet I want to go home with my friend and I can just pile on the bus and the driver would not know that kid doesn't belong over here, and instead of ending up in Jordan Ranch, they end up in Weston Lakes, or vice versa. Kids could end up all over the place and we'd have students going everywhere.
Okay.
Have we explored certain, ending Versatrans and going with a different company?
Yes, ma'am. We're going to address that at our next action steps going for next year, but we do realize that this is an issue. One of the things that we have found out is going to this system, when you do something new and you put some pressure on a system, you start seeing its weak points. And this is where Versatrans and SmartTag in general both have had some flaws within them that really just rose to the surface as we started going through these issues.
I think that's pretty amazing in 2023 that we can't route kids. It's not necessarily Lamar's fault from what you're saying. I just think that this Versatran doesn't, I'm not sure anybody listening to this would go out and purchase that software. But my other question, do we understand why 4,000 students were eliminated from the system the weekend before school started this year?
No, we do not.
We do not know that? Okay, thank you.
And they weren't eliminated. The best way to put it is when you went into our routing system, Versatrans, they were showing, but they weren't showed that they were on a bus.
Gotcha.
They were just hanging out. And then you have to individually click on each one of those students and assign each one of those students individually to that route all over again. So on the 17th, again, we still have students being detached. We did some cleanups on Versatrans. They said clean up these backups. So we had some backups that were in there just in case something were to fail. They said, hey, let's pull these off. And then also there were some errors that they ran in the very, very back of their system. And they gave us a list of errors and say, hey, can you go and correct these errors? So we went in and worked till 10:30 that night, not only cleaning up Versatrans, but also reattaching students and inputting some route corrections. We also sent out Sky Alert messages to Purple and Go Track parents as we were making those corrections. Again, on August the 18th, we still had students being dropped, roughly about 200 at that point in time, in our Purple Track. We worked on that till 10:15 that night due to traffic and routing cleanup. So that was Friday. And then August the 19th and 20th, which was both Saturday and Sunday, our BOS team worked the entire weekend, rerouting really the Purple Track and Go Track, and a lot of it was due to traffic and some cleanups. What we were noticing is, according to the routing system, is if you left, the bus barn at 5:45, you would get to Morgan Elementary, which is a Tier A, at 6:45 for them to be able to eat breakfast. They were actually arriving there at 7:05 or 7:10, and the bell was ringing at 7:15. Well, if it's running, and we'll have an example of this later, if one tier runs behind, then it just starts running behind, and a lot of the traffic issues that we were running into. So again, we had to start making corrections to those routes and bringing them back earlier to be able to achieve our own route time. We had to add 10 routes. So, and what 10 routes was, we had to add 10 bus driving positions just for traffic, being able to split those tiers up and lay them over. And then we had to add due to growth. One thing that we did do is in pulling that together is Roberts and Lehman. We split all those routes except for two. There are two routes that are still both a Roberts and a Lehman bus. The reason being is one goes to Lexabelle Terra area, and it literally goes Lehman and drives right by Roberts at Terrell. So we just left it there because it picks up on its way to the campus. The other one is a Weston Lakes bus that starts at Terrell and literally drives beside Lehman before it gets out to there. Other than that, those bus routes were pulled out. And again, we were sending out Sky Alerts to parents and sending out emails to all our bus drivers because all the bus drivers in the area were having to get new routes because routes were being changed and tweaked and new start times. So our team worked extremely hard the week of, that weekend to be able to get that ready for the first day of school. Some other things that we were facing during that first week was we just needed some additional support to answer phones. Because at that rate, by adding the new routes, all office personnel was actually going out on buses. And just to put it in perspective, most of our routers and office personnel were on buses from 5:30 till 10 o'clock. So they had a hard time being able to come back and answer phones during that time. So we've added 4 different staff members there. Actually, during that week, we added up to 8. We've pared it back down now to 4. We took some flex drivers, which are drivers when bus drivers call in absent, which we average in between 13 to 20 absences a day for our bus system, to be able to pull the Rosenberg flexes over to help with the Fulshire area, which put a little bit more strain on the Rosenberg because now their mechanics and dispatchers are having to drive those buses because those flex drivers aren't there. And again, they will continue to work until 10:30 every night. We sent out Sky Alarm messages to all district parents on the 23rd, and Dr. Nivens released his video message on the 25th. And again, on the weekend of August 26th and 27th, our BOSs worked from 7 to 8:30 both those days, making route corrections and again, attaching other drivers. So action steps that we have continued to take up until this point are the additional phone support. We're continuing to leave them there. The flex drivers that were here to help be able to absences for Rosenberg are still being assigned to the Fulshire area, and our BOSs on the Purple and Go Track are working till 10 o'clock every night as soon as they come off the routes. But a lot of the time is they're getting off route at 10 and have to be back on route at 2. So they have a 4-hour window between routes, and then they're having to, come back afterwards and work on those as well. So our next steps, Mr. Penn is actually back in the district. He was there today and will be here the next 2 days going out and auditing each one of the Purple and Gold routes. Looking at real-time data, one thing that we do notice, and, we put everything on the paper system, but as soon as things hit, things changed, dynamics changed. We've seen a vast improvement over a lot of our district, but we do recognize there are portions of our district that did not see the improvement that we did in other areas. We're to continue to explore driver recruitment strategies. And I have a little bit more data in the following slides about what our surrounding districts look like. And Ms. Hostel, to your point, we are definitely looking at new routing software for next school year, along with our bus management software. We've reached out to our surrounding districts. We know a couple that have made changes in the recent years. So we're going out and looking at them and seeing what they're seeing, what experiences they have, what their parents are experiencing, and getting that feedback from their district as we look to explore that. The other thing is we will also be looking at running this side by side during the spring. So whatever system we decide to go with, we will run it side by side to see if those issues if we're having any issues in the spring, but it would cause a little bit more work, but you'd have to route them in both and just see what that looks like for our system to make sure that it's up and running and being prepared for our next school year, and we're not having these same issues.
Can I ask a question? I did drive out around a lot of the Purple Track schools, and the construction on these roads is incredible, and there were some roads closed that you had to reroute to go a different direction. Do we get alerts of those? I mean, can you put that into the system so it can reroute your bus drivers, or are they coming across it and having to do it themselves?
Yes, ma'am. We have not found a routing system that is real-time, like Waze or something like that, to say, hey, there's a traffic issue, this reroutes. They route it on the system based on the current, without them closing lanes. Like the first day of school on Texas Heritage Parkway, a landscaper was out there and shut down one lane going in each direction. So there's things like that. People are parking on the streets, so a bus can't make a turn, so they have to go down and make another street and loop back around. Those are just real-time conditions that they're day-to-day, they continue to change. The county is very transparent with us to be able to say, hey, these are issues that will be coming, and we have a few that we know that based on their mobility projects, what lanes will be shut down. We have, matter of fact, we've been told that Terrell could possibly have a one lane going one direction down Fulster-Gaston in January possibly because of widening of Fulster-Gaston. So we're trying to build in those, and they work with us the best we can, but also they're trying to improve our roads and our traffic system. So we have to work around those issues as they come up.
So no matter how pretty something looks on paper, real life hits you in the face, and that's kind of what has happened to us.
Yes, ma'am. It sure has.
Huh? That's what my,
Can I also ask, so when you have a bus driver who's using Versatran, and, so Versatran's routed out, from what I understand, routes out the route for them, but say they're a bus driver that's been in the area for a while, and they know a better way to go, or a way that they think is faster, do y'all allow them to do that, to go that way, see what the time is like, and then come back and put that into Versatran so that the route can be changed?
Yes, ma'am. Our bus operation supervisors, they meet with those drivers, so a driver can come in and say, hey, I've noticed this, I can't make this stop, it would really work better if I went up and made these two stops and come back. So those are those route corrections that we're talking about, is drivers come back and they come back into our system and do that. The other thing that's very challenging too is people don't qualify for bus riders. By law, we have to transport sped and the homeless. Those are the only two that we have to. So because of that, we may have on one bus route, they have 28 stops and only picking up 12, but then on Friday afternoon when JV football practice isn't, now we've got stops at every one of them. So our bus rider fluctuates in some of our neighborhoods greatly, depending on sports and things that are going on within that area. There may be some kids that only ride the bus once or twice a month. So, but we still have to run that route because we don't know if they're getting picked up in the morning. We have a better idea in the afternoon, but no, we do take our bus driver input in our bus BOSs, then change that route. But every time we do that, then we have to send out skylers to parents because it changes pickup times anytime we correct the route.
So do your BOSs regularly meet with bus drivers to just take their input or suggestions or anything like that, and then?
They don't regularly, they have regular meetings, but those kind of things, they encourage their drivers to tell them on a daily basis.
Okay.
So it's encouraged, hey, if you're running into this, come to us and let's work out the problems. The problem is sometimes their bus drivers are getting off before the BOSs get off their route, so they're having to hang around until that BOS gets off to be able to make those route corrections, and then the emails, and then the phone calls. Yes, ma'am.
You said that we added 10 routes in the Purple Track area. Is that because of real-time conditions like traffic?
Yes, sir.
So we didn't cut back too much. It was just real-time conditions required us to add more.
What we were noticing is you had an A tier, a B tier, a high school, and a middle school, junior high. What we're noticing, they just flat couldn't do it. some of them couldn't make it to the second campus. So they were dropping off on time and couldn't, like some of the Morgan buses, couldn't make it to Huggins by the 7:15 time. So what we were doing was pulling that Huggins route off and then their middle school, junior high route off is what we were having to do to account for those real time. If we couldn't correct it by start times and getting there and seeing how it worked out, and we're continuing to monitor those as well. We're trying not, because, we'll get to driver vacancies here in a second and where we're at. But every time we split those out, when it's 10 routes, it's really 10 drivers, because most of those drivers, those routes that we pulled off, they're doubled, and some of them are tripled. So we were just splitting them and saying, hey, let's make these shorter, and we just created a different route for one driver, but they still may be driving 2 to 3 tiers.
What's loud? I don't think anyone would argue that the gold, or the purple, and I guess including the gold track as well, is probably the fastest growing area of our district. Based off of what we were expecting as far as enrollment for this year, I guess at the end of last year, and going through the summer and trying to pre-plan some of these routes, we superseded that amount dramatically, didn't we, as far as enrollment on what we were expecting? Was it more? I mean, were we anticipating X amount of kids and it came in significantly heavier, which caused some issues as well?
Our current enrollment is not where we projected it to be at this point in time. Even at that track, it's slightly lower than what we thought, not significantly. I would say this is, the traffic is things that we just could not anticipate. One of them is the McCrary Road and FM 359. That traffic light went in, and we knew it was going in, but we did not, nobody anticipated the amount of traffic backup that was going to cause just on that one road. The thing about it is, most of the gold track sits in the northeast section of Foster, so you have to either come down 723 where TxDOT's working, or you have to go down 359 where they put the new light in, and it just backed it up. And then the intersection of 359 and 1093, that's caused some issues, along with them expanding the toll road down 1093. That has caused some other issues as well. So there was just some traffic things that we just, we've seen that, we didn't experience it all last year, even with Lehman, Roberts, and Forsher all being open and dismissing and arriving at the same time. We didn't experience near the traffic last year that we did this year with only 2 campuses. So we're continuing to work at that and look at that and adjust for those as well.
So maybe it wasn't the enrollment, but did moving to a 4-tier system unintentionally cause more kids to get on the bus because we're making it harder for parents to get, you know what I'm saying? So do we have more students riding the bus this year due to the 4-tier system, do you think?
I don't think so. Last year, at first of the year, we gained 3,000 students, and this year we're gaining right about 2. So we've gained, just to let you know, in week 2 to 3, we gained 200 students. And we've gained about the same from last week to this week. So we're continuing to gain more students on our buses. And again, that fluctuates depending on, what's going on, after-school activities, things of that nature as well. So on August the 9th, we thought we were in great shape. We didn't have any vacancies. We didn't have any issues. By the first day of school, we had 3 drivers resign before the first day of school. So we were like, okay, this is going to be all right. We'll be able to hire and continue to recruit. By August the 18th, we had 3 more drivers resign. So we had 6 vacancies by the end of the first week. Then we came along, and by the 17th, due to the 10 new drivers that we needed for traffic and the one we needed for growth, our 0 grew to 17 fairly quickly. So currently we have 17 vacancies within our department. To put that in perspective, real-time conditions, what we have now, if we had stayed at a 2-tier system, we'd have 112 vacancies today. So if we had stayed at a 2-tier system, we would definitely be at 5 to 6 miles or have 112 comeback routes every day is what we would have. Currently, we have 17. So this is information that is public. We pulled from both KHOU and KPRC have done articles on Fort Bend and South Fair, so we're not really calling anybody out. This is public information. Fort Bend is running a 2-tier system, and they have 48 vacancies, and they have a 2-mile walk zone where we're at a half a mile. South Fairs, they did a 4-tier system, and they have 100 vacancies. And they're at a 0-mile walk zone. So just to put it in perspective, is just within our area, just 2 of the surrounding districts have 148 vacancies versus our 17. And they currently are all having comeback routes. As of right now, we have some bus routes that are running a little late, which we'll talk about that in the tardy, but we're managing a lot better than what we would have been. So we wanted to build out a route. This is routes that we pulled off of our system. So the bus would leave at 5:48 to pick up their first route, looking at a first bus stop of 6:14. That bus route had 18 stops. At 3 of the stops, the students were still walking up to the bus when the bus arrived. So it takes 2 additional minutes for those buses to load on those individual stops. Well, that bus is supposed to arrive at the Tier A elementary school campus at 6:45. Instead, it arrives at 6:51. So it's running 6 minutes behind already. So then you look at Route B, which is typically a 21-minute route. It departs the campus 6 minutes later. It has 17 routes, but along the route, a parent stops the bus driver, which happens, and talks to them and delays that route for 4 minutes. Well, now that bus arrives at the second campus 10 minutes late. Instead of 7:15, it's 7:25. So then it departs for its high school route after it unloads at 7:28. It's got 23 stops. Again, that route was delayed on FM 359 for 5 minutes due to traffic. At one of the stops, the student, again, was walking up, and then it takes 2 additional minutes to load at each stop. So the bus now arrives at 17 minutes late, which is 8:12. Then it starts its middle school, junior high route, and again, it's departing late. It has 15 stops. It's delayed 7 minutes because of the construction zone. Then at 2 stops, the students are still walking up, takes additional minutes to leave. Now it's 28 minutes late, and that bus is arriving right at the first bell. So this is an example that we've actually pulled off the system of something that happened with one of our routes on one day. So then we look at our tardy bus. So a tardy bus is when a bus arrives after the first bell. As you can see on the first day, there was a significant issue on the Purple and Gold track along with the other tracks. If you'll notice by August the 28th, things were getting better. We only had 6. I would say that on the 28th, the reason there's an asterisk by the 1 is because they had a medical emergency on the bus. So that was something that we were not going to be able to deal with. On the 30th, if you'll notice the asterisk by the 7th on the Gold track, that is when we had a car run into one of our buses in front of Foster High School. So when it did, it caused a major traffic jam on 723 and 359. And again, on the 31st, it had 5 buses, and 2 of those buses ran into traffic. It was a construction zone that put up cones and caused a route delay for 2 of those buses. Just to put in perspective, last year, we were averaging 30 tardy buses per day. And of those 30 tardy buses, 5 of them were getting there after the second period of a high school bell had rang. So putting in perspective, we were having that many tardy buses every day of the school year last year. So even though we haven't got it tweaked and we're still have a long ways to go to be able to get this currently on track, we are doing a lot better than what we were last school year when it comes to these tardy buses.
And can say too that I would get phone calls last year, and it was, my daughter's waiting for the bus comes, the bus too full, they have another bus coming. And so that child was arriving late to school every day. Real quickly, and maybe you're going to get to this, and if so, then just say, we'll get to that. Are they leaving the campuses better? Like, the campuses are not having, like last year, you said they could actually even really had 3-tier because they could only take half the kids, take them home and come back for the rest of the kids.
Our worst campus last year by far was Wertheimer Middle School. They were getting out at, I believe it was 3:40, and she was clearing her campus on average between 6:45 and 7 o'clock last year. She was having to stay and leave her class. Right now, we're averaging roughly about 5:15, 5:20, even though they're getting out, at 4:30 now. So within 45 minutes of the bell ringing now, she's clearing her students versus last year, it was at least a 3-hour window from the last bell till she was clearing her last bus rider.
Well, I'm seeing the last bus come through my neighborhood about 5 after 5 or 10 after 5, so
And
it's
yes,
getting better every day.
we still have routes that are not getting kids home till 6:30, and we realize that. but also those students are also getting out 40 minutes later than what they were last year. So they're not, sitting there as much as longer. But it is causing issues, and we're about to go through a PM route. And this is usually what happens on our PM route. And then again, we pulled this directly off a bus route, and what actually happened. The bus arrives at the campus at 2:20, even though they have a 2:50 dismissal, departs at the campus, it starts its route. There just happens to be one pre-K or kinder parent that's not there. So now instead of that bus being able to go all the way to the next B tier, it's got to go all the way back to the A tier school, drop off their student, and then arrive at the next campus.
So is there anything that can be done about that?
Yes, ma'am, we have that
Okay.
further in the presentation. Yes, ma'am. So just by that alone, that one student puts 18 minutes behind within that route. So now when the second tier arrives, it's 18 minutes behind. It's delayed 2 minutes in loading buses. Why? Because when that bus arrives late, kids ran them up and getting them on the bus. The bus departs, again, 17 minutes, or 17 stops. A parent stops to talk to the bus driver, delays the route. It could be, this happened to be, why is the bus running late? My kids were supposed to be here, I thought it was supposed to be here early. Well, that 2-minute conversation now delayed the bus getting to the high school. So now the high school bus is arriving 22 minutes late. When it gets to the high school, it's delayed again for 3 minutes because high school kids tend to loiter a little bit, especially when it's late. And then it departs the campus. Again, at this date, this bus happened to be delayed 15 minutes on 349 because by it delaying, it's tying into different traffic patterns than it would. So it arrives to the middle school junior high campus 40 minutes late. This departs at 5:15. Again, it's delayed on 359. It has 15 stops, but this route was still dropping off the students at 5:48, which is an hour and 18 minutes after the bell rang. So to answer your question, in the student code of conduct on the top of page 63, it states, should there be no one at the bus stop to receive a pre-K kinder student, the student will be taken back to the school for the parent to be picked up there. Should this occur more than twice in a semester, the third occurrence may result in the child losing bus riding privileges. So at this point in time, if a pre-K kinder parent gets a third ride-up, that kinder pre-K will be removed from the bus for the remainder of the semester, per our student code of conduct. Currently, right now, cap and overflow is having an effect on our transportation system. Right now, we currently have 6 bus drivers just driving from Hubernack to Huggins, and then we have another one driving from Hubernack to McNeil, and then we have another one driving from Huggins to Morgan, and then another one driving from the Lindsay to Morgan, and then one driving from Tamaron to Jackson, and another driving from Tamaron to Seguin. And most of these are individual routes because when it says Hubernack, it has to run the entire Hubernack attendance zone, depending on where those students live within that attendance zone, and then drive all the way out to Huggins. And has to reverse that in the afternoon. So right now, we have 2 buses going through the Hubernack attendance zone, one going west and one going east.
So trustees, we'll talk about it in a minute, if you go back to that, Greg. One of the questions I'm getting is, so why don't we just cap some of the perpetrate schools now, and they can still take students if they have space? And so that's the reason why. And so we'll talk about Morgan, I think, still has space for about 120, 129 students. If we cap Morgan now, then that's 3 or 4 more buses we're gonna have to find to pick up students and now transport them to their forced transfer school. So that's why we need to make sure that we allow campuses to fill up, basically, till they have the capacity. So, because we just don't have the capacity in bus drivers.
I assume that whenever we say we're taking the Hubernack route and we're taking those kids to Huggins, those kids are staying on the street corner. They're not taking the Hubernack bus to Hubernack and we're picking them up there. and
No,
then
sir, we
going-
have to drive that entire Hubernack attendance zone, wherever those kids are, and pick those kids up as they're scattered through that entire elementary attendance zone. That's why it takes a bus to be able to do it, because the route is so long, just because of the area that it has to cover.
Would it help with traffic and the way our schools are configured, our parking lots and stuff, if more parents who have the ability in their schedule took their own kids to school for the time being? I mean, it can be a convenience for parents, but if a lot of these parents are frustrated and like, this is ridiculous, I thought y'all were gonna fix this, would that help or would that clog the roads even more in your
So-
professional opinion?
That's a yes or no question, because yes, it would help in some of our campuses that aren't, over capacity for the building. Once you start getting portables and you get 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 kids, the traffic's just going to be there no matter what. It's just a vast majority. At this point in time, it's just, we need to open more schools to be able to spread the students out and to be able to chunk up our district more. And that's why we've really, over the last 18 months, along with the board's help, been able to ramp up the construction and the passing. You know, our community blessed us with a bond in '22 to be able to ramp this up. You know, we'll be opening up 4 campuses next year, 3 elementary schools in the purple track, and a middle school in the silver track, and then the following year, we'll be opening up a middle school, junior high, high school, and 2 more elementaries in the purple and gold track. So within the next 9 years, we will be opening, the next 2 years, we'll be opening up 9 campuses. And a lot of that would help because when Tomas opens up where it's located, it cuts down the distance the gold and some of the purple routes have to go because they have a campus closer.
Also, with some of those campuses that are being built, they're actually being built inside neighborhoods, which would then allow people to ride their bikes or walk to school, you know, if we have sidewalks and bike racks and all that.
Yes, ma'am. We all those campuses like Melton, Randall, and even Terrell all have sidewalks and walk paths to them. But again, right now, if it's over half a mile, we continue to bus those. So even if you live in Jordan Ranch, you go half a mile around the new Melton Elementary, there'll still be members of that community that have walking paths that will still be busing. Because we do that for Adolphus now and McNeil and, you know, other neighborhood schools that we currently have. We're still busing students within the neighborhood.
But there's the option to walk.
They do have the option, yes, ma'am.
Walk or ride.
Yes, ma'am, they sure do.
Yeah.
So if we were to, let's just say, extend we don't pick up within a larger distance, you might have said this and I missed it in all of it, but what would we save as far as bus shortage and time and everything?
Yes, ma'am.
If we pushed it out a little bit, let's say.
If you pushed it out, it would help because we're just transporting less and less students. I would say this, within 1 mile, 21% of our bus riders live within a mile of school. 41% of our bus riders live within 2 miles of our school.
I know it's inconvenient for some, I live within a half a mile of the high school and the middle school of my neighborhood, but there's not, you know, you can't ride a bike and you can't walk.
That is correct.
So I get that, but there's a lot of them that you can. So, you know, you just kind of wonder how you can save, how you can make this work a little bit better in some areas.
I asked the team to run some data, and that is some data I could share with the trustees about what that looks like at a 1 mile, I think 1.5 mile, a 2 mile radius. And as Mr. Buchanan said, you know, 41% of our bus drivers live within 2 miles of our stops. And so, you know, moving that far out, we would eliminate services to 41% of the students that ride the buses. And so the variable here are bus drivers. Mm-hmm. And we know that, you know, there's a national shortage on bus drivers. Some districts have canceled transportation services altogether and said, we're just not doing it. Last year, some had National Guard drive. And so, you know, we have to understand that the variable is bus drivers, and there aren't any out there. And, you know, I'm trying to keep the ones I have and feed them chicken, whatever I can give them. I'm trying to feed it to them, keep the ones I have. But, you know, that's the variable. And so knowing that we don't have any, you know, we're not happy with, it's better, but we're not happy with what's happening. We still have students that have to get to we said last year, students will have to get to the bus stop, you know, the bus will be there about 6:05, 6:04, and I think it's 6:03 now, something like that. So we said that last year, but that still doesn't make it right, just because we said it. And so the only way we can fix that is if we get more bus drivers to split those routes. So students have to get there early. And so, but right now, we don't have that. And this 4-tier system was supposed to alleviate that. We were supposed to have our BOSs back in the office. We were supposed to have our dispatchers back in the office. We were supposed to have our mechanics back at the shop. And now we're back to where we were, where our BOSs are driving buses. Mr. Buchanan is driving the bus. I'm sure he would make me drive a bus if I didn't let go of my CDL years ago. You know, everybody's driving buses. And so when people call transportation and say, you know, what's up with my bus route, nobody's there to answer because they're all driving buses. And so we just don't have any, and they're not there. And I'm glad we're on the 17 short and not 100 short. But that's the variable in this thing. But in order for us to really fix this like we want to be fixed, we would have to take more drastic measures. And I just want to make sure that we say that we have to take some drastic measures to fix it the way it needs to be fixed.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we really need to explore this, expanding it maybe to a mile. I mean, we are not a rural school district anymore. We used to be when we had a lot fewer students. The suburbs have come to us a long time ago, and that might be something we really have to do.
And I would just remind the board too, it takes us 3 to 4 months to get a bus driver. I mean, because it is not, the state does not make it easy for you to drive a bus, and I wouldn't expect them to, because they're carrying our most precious cargo. So if a bus driver comes up and applies, it takes us from the moment they get hired, roughly 3 to 4 months before they can get their license, and we can put them on a bus, they've been properly trained, and then can take our students to and from school. So even if we have 17 shortages now, we hired 17 today, it still will be November before those bus drivers hit the streets to be able to drive our kids.
And I think it has to be said too, like you said, some districts have canceled bus service. Not that we don't want to provide bus service, but it's, I don't want to say a perk, but it's, we're trying our very best to provide a service to our families. And you're right, we may have to make some hard choices.
The whole thing was not to eliminate services.
Right.
That's why I went to a 4-tier system. That was I guess that was the direction that the trustees gave me was, we don't want to eliminate services if we don't have to. So that's what made the 4-tier system, the option, was because we could still give services at a half mile or greater to all of our students.
Well, and one of the things that we need to be careful of is that with our 385 square miles, a mile here is not equal to somebody else's mile. They might live in more of a rural area with parents that don't have a car or any way to transport their child to school. And I know we talked about that last year. So if you said, okay, we're going to go out a mile, but we're not going to do a mile over here, but we're going to do a mile over there, then you're going to have, why are you providing them bus service and not ours? So we're going to have to be very careful what we do and how we, I remember years ago, we weren't giving bus service to the kids to Seguin, and we said, but they're not able to get there. Those are our little pre-Kers and the kids. So now we provide, but then they're from 7 different elementary schools. So it does make it harder, but we do need to be careful. Yes, we do have a lot of subdivisions, but we still have a lot of kids that are not in an area where they could safely get themselves to school. And just as a side note, I saw today that one of the middle schools over there in my neighborhood from Fort Bend, a child was hurt coming to school in a scooter, a car, because they don't provide bus service to that middle school. So, we just have to balance it, make sure that we're taking care of our kids and we're taking care of what we can do the best for our whole community. And if you'll indulge me for just 1 minute, I did wear my transportation shirt today in solidarity. And because I just want to say to our bus drivers, you are the first face these children see in the morning, and you're the last face they see in the evening. You are as important as their teacher in the classroom, and thank you for what you do.
So we have 17 vacancies, but we're faring a lot better than the other districts. So what are we doing better than the other districts where we're not short this insane amount?
It was the 4-tier system.
Okay.
If we just take 2-tier, we would be at 112.
Okay. So,
Yes, ma'am. So what we're doing now is I don't want to publicly say, because, you're kind of letting the cat out of the bag, publicly, if we're trying to recruit different things. We have some different strategies that we're looking at, and we're exploring, because there are some financial impacts to some of those, of being able to recruit and retain our current drivers. The other thing that has been, I will give a shout out to Forster High School and Lehman Junior High. Those coaches have said, hey, if you can give me a route, I'll drive one. And we split routes off just so they drive just their campus. And they're like, hey, as long as I'm not in season, but hey, a coach will pick it up on this other side. We were able to add 9 coaches and teachers to be able to drive during their off season, and we're paying them. So we're continuing to look at how can we expand that program? Can we get it to elementary schools where an elementary school teacher can just drive just an Adolphus route, if that's just Adolphus route. Because we have buses. Buses are not the issue, it's a person to drive it. So nothing's off the table at this point in time. We're exploring every option we can to get as many drivers as we can to be able to move our kids.
I will echo what my fellow trustee over said to our bus drivers. That was one of the things I wanted to make a point, and I see a lot of the red shirts here. And from a dad, I say thank you. From a community member, I say thank you. Thank you for taking care of keeping them safe. I was speaking to another trustee, and we were talking about we don't necessarily have the relationship with our city leaders like we probably should, and to leverage some of those relationships to say, okay, we need sidewalks, we need streetlights, we know all these things. If we want to be able to create more walking and bike riding, encourage those healthy habits, there's got to be sidewalks to walk on. I live in a house that was built in 1952. There is not a sidewalk anywhere near a 2-mile radius, 3-mile radius of my neighborhood. So for my kids, even going outside and playing, you got roads and you got drainage ditches. So out there playing in the streets. So we want kids to go back and forth to school. I got 2 schools in my neighborhood. That's not feasible. We worked with the city of Richmond and some other community leaders to put streetlights up and sidewalks over near Jackson. That's something whenever the community organized and we were able to bring some residents from the community and petition the city of Richmond did what they needed to do to make that safe, walkable space. There's still streets over there in North Richmond that are not safe, and some of that's in the ETJ and all that kind of stuff. So we got to think about, we're working with 19 municipalities. How many? 15. So there's a lot of missing pieces there, and a lot of our community is just not safe. So for our bus drivers that are keeping our babies safe, thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
All right. As our next presenter comes up, a couple things I'll do. I want to thank the trustees for calling the meeting because trustees know the inner workings, right? You know, I talk to them just about every day and I let them know what we're doing. They know the inner workings, so it's great to continue to have the conversation in public so everybody can see and hear, what's going on. So, and having TASBO come and audit the routes and all those things, Greg and his team and SLU pulled out all the stops to make sure that we can be as proactive as possible. One thing I do want to say to, the community and people watching, kind of echo the video that I sent out. We did get quite a few emails, and the trustees, I appreciate you. They always send them to me and say, hey, that's reaching out, and so we would have somebody reach out. I met with several parents face-to-face. Only one of those conversations was actually pleasant. It was, only one was pleasant. He and his wife came to my office, and we talked and had a very pleasant conversation. But most of the conversations I had were not pleasant. And I understand the frustration. But what I want to say is, we don't have to have a crucify him mentality. And I was going to be very transparent and honest, is that when I talk to folks, it's always about, okay, so who are you going to fire? The bus is late, who are you going to fire? The bus is 10 minutes late, who are you going to fire? I talked to Mr. Forshee the other day when the water went out in Fulshire, and he got complaints because he was passing out water, but it wasn't cold water. And then, who are you going to fire? And I'm like, we don't have to have a crucify him mentality. We don't have to have, somebody makes a mistake, now you're done. That council culture, we have to address it because it's infecting our young people. It's infecting our young people, and they see it, and it bothers me. It bothers me when kids think it's okay to behave in a way that is barbaric, that's confrontational, and our students don't see the adults doing it. And our students believe that if I disagree with you, I can cuss you out, I can assault you, I can get on social media and lie about you, and I can do all these things to you because we disagree. And as adults, we have to be able to disagree and still be able to go eat chocolate cake together, right? But listen, y'all, as a community, we're failing our young people because they're watching our behavior. And I have bus drivers quitting, and we're calling bus drivers and saying, hey, would you consider coming back? And it's like, no, I don't want to come back because I'm tired of getting cussed out at the bus stop. And I've seen and I've heard of bus drivers getting a PDF of their routes and taking their own personal vehicle to drive the route, just to make sure they know how to do it. They don't have to do that. They're using their own gas to drive the route. I have BOSs staying in late in the weekends, and I've gone several times, and I can't create a route to save my life, but I can buy you some chicken, I can bake some pizza, and I can hang out with you. And I've offered that several times. But I want to say I appreciate you because I know it's tough. It's a service industry. And it's unfortunate in the service industry, you get treated pretty poorly. And in my video, I want to continue to say, before you go off, before you snap on a teacher, a bus driver, or anyone else at the school, call me. I'm a big boy, I can handle it, I'm okay. Send me the email, send the trustees email, they'll send it to me. Let's just make sure that this cancel culture, y'all, we have to address it. When somebody makes a mistake, we don't have to end their life and change their livelihood for the rest of their lives. People have to eat. People have families to take care of. And we're all human. And last I checked, we all made a mistake today. So when folks make a mistake, let's not just cancel them out and want to crucify them. Let's see what we can do to help each other and support each other. Because that's why we're here. We have to take care of our young people. They're depending on us, y'all. They see us. And right now we're failing them. They see us, and we're failing them. So we have to do better as a community. Okay? All right. So, Mr. Maxwell, you're next, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Madam President, trustees, Dr. Nivens. Tonight, we're presenting an update to the enrollment management plan while also reviewing past information shared with the board, as well as some updates about some specific campuses. So first, I just wanted to start off and talk about the Campus Capacity Committee. It is made up of a district and campus administrators. We have the committee that continuously monitors the enrollment of our campuses, and then the committee makes recommendations to the superintendent as possible necessary cappings of campuses and then identifying possible overflow campuses. On the screen, you'll see the dates of all the times that the Campus Capacity Committee has come together to meet and analyze data and create possible recommendations. And another thing that the Capacity Committee uses is the idea of capacity. For the board and public's information, capacity is calculated by looking at the total number of classrooms in a campus and then multiplying that by the number 25 for elementary campuses and for 28 for secondary. But then we also need to take into consideration special programs that are offered at the campuses that may necessitate a lower student-to-teacher ratio in certain classrooms. So I'm going to take you back to December 14th, 2021. This was what was presented to the board back then. Back in December of 2021, it was shared that Hubenack Elementary's had a campus enrollment of 1,221 students. It was also shared that the building's original capacity was 750 students, and with the addition of campus portables, the total campus capacity will allow for about 13,000 students, or 1,300 students, but remember, this was back in 2021. This number gets slightly smaller when you include the needed dedicated areas to provide for additional services on the campuses. And then back then, the campus was nearing capacity as it was continuing to grow, and at that time, the immediate challenge was that they were out of space to add additional portable campuses. Portable buildings. The solution recommended back then was for the enrollment at Hubenack Elementary to be capped for that time. This was alleviating the overcrowding concerns at Hubenack. The capping of Hubenack Elementary required that any new enrollee in the Hubenack attendance boundary zone attend at that time Huggins Elementary. So we started to look at why were we choosing Huggins at that time. Huggins Elementary at that time housed all of the attendants of both Huggins and Morgan Elementary. But then Morgan Elementary were going to open their new building back on January 4th of 2022, and this would allow for some adjustments and room to be available at Huggins. Huggins was identified as the ideal campus to assist with Hubenack, basically because of the close proximity, as well as the number of portables that were available back then. As you remember, Morgan was there, had all the portables. Morgan opened up the new building. They had a lot of portables available at Huggins. The number of portables at Huggins Elementary campus is accommodated for the increase along with any additional growth at the time we were considering that move. So then on January 4th, 2022, any student that intended to enroll at Hubenack was redirected to Huggins Elementary. This plan was really going to continue for the 2022-2023 school year. However, we had a few exceptions in place to ensure that families of Hubenack would be able to have younger siblings enroll at Hubenack. The exceptions eliminated the need for those parents to have students enrolled at two different elementary campuses, and so allowed pre-K and kinder to enroll at Hubenack. Transportation was and continues to be provided for the students that are attending Huggins that were living in the Hubenack zone. And back in 2021, the plan was to remain in effect until the opening of Elementary 33. Mr. Buchanan here is going to give us an update of that piece of land for what was Elementary 33.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Dr. Nivens. That land was at basically at the corner of Beech Nut and Peak. That piece of property was supposed to be Elementary 33, and instead it got moved down to Elementary School 35. And we opened Randall Elementary, moved to 33. Now that piece of property has now been moved to Elementary 37 because we're opening up Elementary 35, which is across Bel Air, which is much closer to Hubenack, than this one to be able to relieve. But right now, Fort Bend County is widening Beech Nut. They started at Mason on both sides and they're widening it. If you've also noticed, if you've been down Grand Parkway, there is a bridge that really doesn't do anything, and that's Peak Road. So Peak Road will be headed south eventually. The problem with that is the drainage of that whole area has to go north and east. So if you look at the line here, as they put in Peak Road, it has to go east, back this direction, and then down Beech Nut. Well, right here between the neighborhood and the elementary school itself is two pipelines. Those pipelines do not have to be lowered for the expansion of Beech Nut, but they do have to be lowered for us to be able to have drainage for both Peak Road and for Elementary now 37. Fort Bend County has a mobility bond that's out there right now. $6 million of that is to lower those two pipelines. So with a successful bond from them in this November, those pipelines will be lowered and this campus will be able to open in the fall of 26. But again, 35 will be on the Tomas Banks site, which is directly south of Bel Air from Hubenack, and it will get relief in the fall of 25.
Thank you, sir. Any questions on the presentation that was given in December of 2021? All right, the next presentation to go through is one that was given just a couple months ago, May 16th of 2023. So back in May, we shared that we are continuously analyzing our enrollment data for all of our campuses in LCISD. Every week, the enrollment of campuses is imported to a shared spreadsheet that we analyze and review. Also, we include PASS's projections for the 23-24 school year, which is the projections for the August 27th, 2023 snapshot date. We take that into account. The enrollment of the campuses are compared against the capacity of the physical buildings as well as portables. These data points are analyzed to determine any trends, especially comparing them to PASS's projections. The district's campus capacity committee reviews the spreadsheet of enrollment and determines if the campus is in one of three different levels, which is either plan, warn, or cap. Plan is when the campus is 44 students away from capacity, warn is 22 students away, and cap is when we are nearing very close to that capacity. So back in May, I presented about three specific campuses: Tamaron Elementary, Frost Elementary, and Lindsay Elementary. So back in May, when we looked at Tamaron Elementary, it had a campus enrollment of 1,129 students, with a PASSA projecting them to have 1,243 students coming this October. We shared that the building had an original capacity of 854 students. With the addition of campus portables, the total campus capacity allowed for about 1,206 students, and that the campus was really coming close to capacity and nearing and continuing to grow. So the challenge shared that evening was that we are running out of space of additional portables at Tamaron Elementary. During that meeting, we shared that the solution would be that Tamaron Elementary for the 23-24 school year would be capped when it hits capacity. This would alleviate any future overcrowding concerns at Tamaron. The capping of Tamaron Elementary would require any new enrollee in the Tamaron student attendance boundary to enroll at Jackson Elementary. When we looked at the PASSA projections, we looked at approximately 37 students needing to enroll at Jackson from Tamaron. And the reason for selecting Jackson was that Tamaron Elementary services our dual language program for our purple track. and that the closest campus to Tamaron that has that program is Jackson Elementary. It was also shared that both campuses had the same start time of 7:45 a.m. So for Frost Elementary back in May, it was shared that Frost campus enrollment was 1,115 students. PASA was projecting them to have 1,141 students by October of this year. The building had a capacity of 854 students. With the portable buildings, the capacity was 1,118. We also shared that the campus was continuing to grow and coming close to capacity, and that one of the challenges, again, for this is lack of space for additional portable buildings. What we shared that evening was that enrollment at Frost Elementary would be capped when it hits capacity. This would alleviate any future overcrowding concerns at Frost. The capping of Frost would then require any new enrollee at Frost Elementary attendance boundaries to attend Jackson Elementary. Based on the PASA projections, we were looking at 23 students needing to enroll at Jackson from Frost. We also then shared that they both had the same start time of 7:45 a.m. Then looking at Lindsay Elementary back in May, it had an enrollment of 1,176 students, with PASA projecting them to be at 1,173 by this October. The capacity of the original building, 854 students, with portables, 1,206 students. We also noticed that this campus was coming close to capacity at that time, and again, the challenge was the lack of space for portable buildings. The solution that we came up with for Lindsay Elementary was that when Lindsay Elementary hit capacity, that we would cap it. The capping of Lindsay Elementary would require any new enrollee in Lindsay Elementary to attend Morgan Elementary. Back in May, we also talked about we did not have any PASA numbers because PASA was lower on the estimates for Lindsay Elementary. Lindsay had already surpassed them. And we also then shared that both campuses had a start time of 7:15 a.m. So when we reviewed this back in May, we were, from the PASA projections, about 60 students would be attending Jackson from our caps, and that these temporary holds would be for the 2023-2024 school year only. We also then discussed that it was shared for this plan that it is only for new students identified at campuses that are moving into our attendance zones. We talked about the district providing transportation for our students. Also back in May, we stated that current families may enroll pre-kindergarten and kindergarten students at their zone campuses. With the expedited growth that we've received, we've made it necessary to cap both pre-K and kindergarten students and overflow them due to space restrictions. One other thing that was shared at the May board meeting was a pre-kindergarten update. We discussed providing pre-K classes from Austin and Frost campuses to Seguin Early Childhood Center. Also back in May, the bilingual students from Austin and Frost attend pre-K at Seguin. We also then shifted Huggins pre-K students to Morgan Elementary. The reasons for these shifts was an attempt to alleviate the overcrowding at campuses, as well as an attempt not to split students in the same grade level from campuses. Bilingual pre-K students were already receiving services at Seguin. Now the entire population of pre-K would be services at Seguin. We then shared a list of campuses that we were continuing to monitor. The campuses are still being closely monitored every day, as these campuses have enrollments that are also creeping towards their campus capacities. If it became necessary to cap any of these campuses, the red track campuses were identified as the overflow. Any questions about the May presentation? So next, Ms. Cole Hamilton will review the presentation about the enrollment management plan that was shared with the board back in June.
Thank you, Dr. Maxwell. Okay, so as we shared at our June meeting, as a fast growth district, we're experiencing significant enrollment increases in some areas of our district. And as a result, we've got some schools that are over capacity while we have some campuses that are well under capacity. And so the team developed the enrollment management plan to better balance student enrollment and alleviate overcrowding. So this item was just to share the comprehensive enrollment management options for elementary and secondary campuses. So for this school year, at the previous meeting, the campus Capacity Committee shared its cap and overflow plan, which is one way we do address student overcrowding. At the time, they shared we have some capped campuses. They shared the temporary hold campuses, as well as the campuses that we are monitoring. And for the 24-25 school year, we're going to open some new elementary campuses, and this is another way that we address our fast growth is by simply building new campuses. So for the 24-25 school year, we will open up Melton Elementary and Randall Elementary, and those two campuses are likely to impact the Huggins, Lindsay, and Timron attendance zones. You can see noted on this chart, Melton is in yellow near the top, Randall is near the bottom of the brown section in yellow. And then we utilize our data points to look at capacity. The red represents campuses that are over its total capacity and we need to make a decision. The orange represents that they're just over their building capacity, they're using portables. And the blue represents campuses whose enrollment is 70% or less than building capacity. And then from our vantage point, we feel that a decision would be needed for those campuses as well. So Melton and Randall will likely impact Huggins, Lindsay, and Timron, and so that's the data chart for those campuses. And again, Melton and Randall open next school year.
Could I ask, why did y'all not include Terrell on here?
So Terrell Elementary,
Yeah.
for this one right here, so it's the next
Oh,
one.
it's next,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay,
No, no
sorry.
worries, no worries. So also opening next school year is Terrell Elementary, and that campus is likely to impact the Bentley, Hubenack, and Adolphus communities. You'll see Terrell's noted at the top in pink, in the pink area in yellow, and this is the data chart for Terrell Elementary. As a note to trustees, during the June meeting, we did share that Terrell Elementary will likely open over capacity, and we wanted our trustees to note that this was originally part of the 2017 bond, and so this campus was supposed to open in 2020. Another way we can address our enrollment challenges and better balance enrollment across campuses is leveling. And we are looking to change leveling because we recognize that leveling has dual meanings. But in this capacity, we say we want to take students that are at a campus that's over capacity, students who are campus that's under capacity, and move those students by neighborhoods to better balance, i.e. like level. And so looking at some opportunities that we could do. Now, again, rezoning we have to do. We are building new campuses and we have to create the population of students to attend. These next scenarios I'm going to present are options that we can do to better address enrollment challenges. So we're calling this part the southeast part of the district. We can look at our current campuses, Hutchinson, Campbell, Dickinson, Williams, Carter, and Velasquez. And when we look at the data charts, you'll see what's in blue. Those are the campuses that are significantly below their capacity. You'll note Carter in orange, which is over the building capacity, and they are using portables. And so we have an opportunity to do something with these campuses to better balance enrollment. Looking at the east part of the district, which would be Austin, Frost, Jackson, Long, Pink, and Smith Elementary, we see that we've got Jackson, Long, Pink, and Smith that are under capacity, while we've got Frost that is over capacity. And Austin, of course, is over building capacity, and they are using portables. So trustees, in October, Cabinet's going to review some attendance zone options, definitely looking at the attendance zones for the Melton, Randall, and Terrell communities, but also look at the options for leveling should we choose to do that. In November, we're going to present information to principals. We shared that we'll bring it to you all as a future action item in November. In December, we will select our ABC, that's our attendance boundary committee. In December, we'll bring that information to you all for you to determine the final options that the ABC committee will consider, and you'll approve the committee. We'll launch a community survey for those impacted communities, December, January. We'll hold the ABC meetings in January with the intent to bring you some attendance zones for consideration at the February board meeting. We noted on this timeline that we would be rezoning for 3 new campuses and potentially leveling for 2 areas. So that's a lot of ABCs. That's up to potentially 10 to 15 ABC meetings, depending on how we break things up.
I have a question.
Yes,
Will you
ma'am.
have different ABC committees per zoning area? It's not like one huge committee?
Yes, ma'am.
One for this school, one for that school, and one...
And we even talked about, do we need to split up? Because we've been talking, we say Melton Randall together because it impacts similar communities, but we've even discussed perhaps having an ABC for the Melton Elementary Campus and an ABC for the Randall Community Elementary
I kind of
Campus.
would suggest that because people do have different opinions, even though they're living close together. And you just want to make sure everybody's heard equally.
Yes, ma'am. And then for the 25-26 school year, we continue to have new campuses opening, and these are the campuses that we've got our naming forms out for now. So elementary number 35 will likely impact the Adolphus, Bentley, Hubenack, and Frost area. And you can see that, again, Frost being at capacity, Adolphus, Bentley, and Hubenack are in need of relief. And even if we open 35, our campuses won't see relief immediately, but perhaps over time. But even by the 27-28 school year, elementary 35 becomes over capacity. Now, with this frost data, this does not account for the fact if we address frost in our leveling option. So if we address frost through leveling, the frost data could look much different here when it's time to rezone. Elementary 36 is likely to impact the Huggins and Tamaron communities. And the Huggins and Tamaron communities seem to be among the fastest growing. They are coming faster than we can build them. So even when we open elementary 36, it just provides slight relief, and you see we're back in the red for the Huggins and Tamaron communities. At the secondary level for the 25-26 school year, we will open the Tomas High School, which is likely to impact Foster, Fulshire, Terry, and Lamar. And we've shared our data points for our secondary campuses. This is the middle school and junior high. Data for option A. And we shared our high school data. And at the time, I shared that right now, we currently open our high schools with 2 grade levels, 9th through 10th. Then year to year, we roll up and add an additional grade level. But for maximum relief, we may need to consider opening Tomas High School with more grade levels. Our area superintendents have met with the principals. We do have those data points. We're putting that together, trustees, to share for you at an upcoming meeting about what it could look like to open a high school with more grade levels, including the risks, the benefits, and the impact. And so this was option A, meaning we rezone how we typically do, but we did present trustees with an option B for consideration. At that time, I did share that I'm a former parent of another fast-growth district in another city, and that when my daughter was in 5th grade, we thought she would go to one high school that was close to my house. I drove by it every time. By the time she was in 8th grade, right before when she started middle school, that was in 5th grade, when she started middle school, we learned she wouldn't go to that high school, she would go to another high school. And by the time she finished middle school, she was rezoned for a 3rd high school. And so that was 3 different high schools in a 5-year period. But what I did appreciate was a notice as a parent. I did appreciate knowing when my child was elementary that she would not be going to the high school that I thought. And so the team, we put our heads together and we considered, okay, what would it look like to give our kind of parents and our staff that kind of advance notice? So we did create an option B, which would pretty much create feeder patterns throughout our district. And so we've broken these slides up because there's a lot of data. So this is what our red and blue tracks could look like over the next 5 years or so. We would decide which campuses would feed into the blue track, and that would be the color track, the high school, the secondary complex of those elementaries. And as we open new campuses, we would align as such. So right now for the 23 school year and the 24 school year under this model, we do have some elementaries that are split color tracks. But you'll see if we go with this model, we've eliminated the split color tracks and people will have true feeder patterns. Our purple and gold tracks would look like this. And then our maroon and silver tracks. And so as we continue to open up secondary complexes, and again, these color tracks were not determined, we just created some color just for the sake of an option, but this shows you what would feed into secondary 7, our secondary complex 8, and our secondary complex 9 over time, should we create a district realignment and create true feeder patterns. And then for the 26-27 school year, we are opening up elementary 37. That would likely impact Hubenack, Terrell, Adolphus, and McNeil. And here are those data points. Elementary 38, which hits the southwest side of the district. That's Bowie, Beasley, Culver, Meyer. And then finally, for the 27-28 school year, we should be prepared to open up secondary complex 8, which would impact Foster, Fulshire, Terry, Lamar, and even the new Tomas High School. And we just have our same data points that we're working with now. Trustees, were any questions about the presentation that we shared in June? Okay, thank you.
Good Good evening, trustees, Dr. Nivens. So now we're going to talk about what's currently going on. So here, you've already seen tonight with our campus capacity committee, we focus on enrollment when it comes to the current capacity and the location where the campus is, and the alignment of programs such as dual language and special education programs. We start to plan at 44 students, 1 at 22 students, and 10 we start to cap and take action. So our standards for our portables, so maximum 8 portables on campus. So think about this. If you see 8 portables, that means 16 classrooms. 16 classrooms can equal up to 448 student spaces. So, for instance, it's 8 portables times 2 classrooms, it's 16 classrooms. If we do a 1:25 ratio, that's 400 students, and then a 1:28 ratio, that's 448 students. So now Tamaron Elementary currently. Right now, we have 1,183 students there, and the capacity is 1,206. And Tamaron is currently capped, and those students attend Jackson Elementary.
Dr. Waits, can you go back? Why did we cap Tamaron? If you go back to that first slide, we capped them on August 1st.
Yes, we capped it on August 1st due to the projection and enrollment. And you see on the enrollment on September, due to no shows of students that didn't show up that currently were enrolled at that time on August 1st. Jackson Elementary has a space available right now of 130 students available, spaces at Jackson Elementary. And Jackson Elementary currently has 369 students attending. Yes, ma'am.
Can I look at that real quick?
Absolutely.
So Jackson can hold, what's the total capacity for?
499 students.
So the original capacity of the building itself is 455.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are portables there or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So it only adds like 40 spaces?
Yes, ma'am. With those, the portables are there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they're not mini portables?
No, not many.
Okay. So I think that, just want to just say that because I know a lot of people in the purple track are asking why we're not routing more kids instead of to Morgan and continuing to add to Morgan, why we're not routing more kids to Jackson. But the reason is because they don't have enough they don't have land for portables, or can you?
The space and land for portables, I'll refer that question to Mr. Buchanan.
So one thing that we ran into, and we noticed it more at Huggins, is the building infrastructure. So the building, so we pulled a total of 8 portable classrooms off Huggins because we noticed that the core part of the building, cafeteria, gyms, things of that nature, can't handle that many more portables. If you'll notice the size of Jackson, it's smaller than Huggins itself. It's only 455. So now you're looking at, can we get them through the classrooms? Do they have enough restrooms within the building? Things of that nature. That's a lot of the reasons that it only has 2 portable classrooms there, is because the infrastructure of the building really can't handle more than that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. So now we're moving to Frost Elementary. The current enrollment is 1,080 students, and the capacity with portables is 1,118 students. So when or if Frost is capped, Frost Elementary students will attend Jackson Elementary. And remember, Jackson Elementary has 130 spaces available. Lindsay current enrollment is 1,208 students with a capacity of 1,206 students. Lindsay Enrollment Solution was started on August 1st, and those students were forced transferred to Morgan Elementary. Morgan Elementary currently has 1,043 students, and the capacity is 1,162 students, with 7 empty classrooms right now as we speak at Morgan Elementary, with available space of 119 student spaces. Now, if Morgan is capped, those students will be forced transferred to McNeil Elementary. And McNeil Elementary has 177 student spaces available. That's if Morgan is capped. Now I'm going to pass it along to our proud principal, Dr. Gibson, regarding Morgan Elementary.
Good evening, Dr. Nivens, Board of Trustees. So I'm here this evening to talk about some of the action steps that me and my team have taken to prepare for our growth and enrollment. And so recently, to alleviate some of the traffic concerns, we've opened our doors at 15 minutes earlier to alleviate that. Last spring, I began early on working with HR to recruit and hire staff to prepare for our growth and enrollment. Also, last spring, we assembled a master schedule planning committee so that we could make adjustments to our master schedule impacting lunch and recess, which would allow for fewer classes to be outside with the growth in grade levels for safety. Part of our back-to-school professional development included training and onboarding our new staff members on campus arrival and dismissal procedures. Additionally, like many campuses in LCISD, we've adopted the Ron Clark House system. And so this essentially helps to build community within our school. And so about 2 weeks ago, we welcomed all of our new Morgan students into their houses. And so also in partnership with our Friends of Morgan, we just recently had or hosted a volunteer interest meeting for any new and returning parents or guardians who are interested in volunteer opportunities at Morgan. And lastly, I am continuing to work with our area superintendent and HR to monitor enrollment trends. And like Dr. Wade said, we currently have 7 available classrooms right now to accommodate adding additional classes when needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. So right now, if Jackson Elementary is capped, the forced transfer school will be Taylor Ray Elementary. That's if Jackson reaches the capacity. So for instance, we have a flow chart of capped campuses and where the forced transfer students are attending. Humanak students attend Huggins and McNeil. Huggins students attend Morgan, and then if Morgan is capped, they will go to McNeil. McNeil, remember, has 177 students spaces available. Huggins and Lindsay Elementary students attend Morgan, and if Morgan is capped, they will attend McNeil. Tamron Elementary students attend Jackson, and if Jackson is capped, they will attend Taylor Ray, and Taylor Ray has 186 student spaces available. Now, if I'm a student and I have been forced transferred from Tamron and I attend Jackson, that means if I'm pre-K, I have to go to Seguin. Seguin supports our all pre-K students. And if I'm capped at Jackson and I go to Taylor Ray, that means that I will have to go to Seguin if I'm a pre-K student. And the same right now with Tamron. If I'm forced transfer from Tamron and I'm a pre-K student, that means I go to Seguin Early Childhood. We have been communicating with our community regarding the district website and regarding capping and our campus websites, and our community letters have come out from our parents, to our parents from our principals as well. And now what we're focusing on in our CCC meeting, that's the Campus Capacity Committee, we're focusing on Frost and Bentley. As you can see right now, Frost Elementary is at 98% capacity and Bentley is at 94% capacity. We've been communicating with the principals to ensure our plan of action if we have to cap. Now, a construction update for 2024 fall. Fulshire High School has 1,000 additional seats that's going to be built for the 24 fall, and Foster High School has a 500-seat addition for the students at Foster High School. And new campuses are Steenbergen Middle School, Milton, Randall, and Terrell Elementary. Continuing the fall 24 update, new campuses are Steenbergen Middle School, and it relieves Wright Junior High. Milton Elementary relieves Huggins, Lindsay, and Tamron. Randall Elementary relieves Huggins, Lindsay, and Tamron. And Terrell Elementary relieves Bentley, Hubenack, and Adolphus. Fall 25, new campuses, Thomas High School, Banks Junior High, Bilstein Middle School, and Elementary 35 and 36. Fall 25, new campuses, Thomas High School will relieve Fulshire High School, Foster, Terry, and Lamar Consolidated High School. Banks Junior High will relieve Lehman Junior High, Briscoe Junior High, and Bilstein Middle School will relieve Roberts Middle School and Wertheimer Middle School. Fall 25, construction update, the elementary 35 relieves Adolphus, Bentley, Hubenack, and Frost. Elementary 36 relieves Huggins and Tamaron. New campuses for fall 26, elementary 37, elementary 38. And fall 26, that's fall 26, fall 27, new campuses are high school 8, junior high 8, middle school 8, and our exciting new CTE Center. Fall 26, new campuses, elementary 37 relieves Hubenack, Turl, Adolphus, and McNeil. Elementary 38 relieves Bowie, Beasley, Culver, and Meyer. High school 8 relieves Fulshire High School. Junior high 8 relieves Lehman Junior High. And middle school 8 relieves Roberts Middle School. And what we're doing as the Campus Capacity Committee, CCC Committee, we're continuing to look at those campuses that are capped. And we also are having our ABC Committee, which Ms. Cole Hamilton mentioned earlier. And we're going to focus on Steenbergen Middle School, Milton, Randall, and Terrell Elementary. Have any questions at this time? Yes, sir.
When you, talking about the elementary level, when you talk about the capacity available at Morgan, for instance, if we were to fill that up in the next 6 weeks, do we have the teachers to teach those students?
Dr. Gibson also stated that he's working with HR to make sure that we have the teachers once we have the capacity at that time. So if new students come in, we'll make sure that Dr. Gibson is getting with HR so that we can get teachers to come in. Now, remember, we're also looking at a teacher shortage. So just because the teachers are out, the positions are out there, doesn't mean the teacher's going to make sure they get in that classroom.
Right. I haven't been to the Purple Track, but I'm going to Fulshire High School later this month. But you answered my question. I just want to reiterate it. I was concerned about the Roberts Middle School students currently at Terrell, but the Roberts Middle School is going to be back in their home building next year because Fulshire High School is going to have the 1,000-seat addition opened.
That's correct, sir.
I didn't realize it was coming online that quick. That's
Yes,
great.
sir.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
But it still won't help the traffic.
Thank y'all.
Yeah. Ms. Johnson, are there any public participation comments? Okay. Then it is 7:40 PM, and we are adjourning to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney. We're now back in open session. It is 8:06 PM, and we have a quorum. Are there any motions to be made?
I have one. I move that we approve the purchase of CTE land as presented in executive session.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Nope. Okay, motion passes. And let's see. Is that it? I guess that's it. That's it. Okay. The meeting is adjourned. It is 8:06 PM.